Hi, it's Mac Smith, director and producer of Scouts Honor inside of Marching Brotherhood. And I have Tom Tollefsen, who's the other producer director and our guest for today, which is co-star of our documentary film, Devin Garza. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing good, Mac. How are you guys?
Good. And you're broadcasting from where today?
Lovely northeastern Florida, Jacksonville.
Terrific. And Mr. Garza,
Yep.
welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you too. It's been a while.
It has been. And where are you these days?
I am in Norman, Oklahoma for a couple weeks. I'm off tour, and I'm finishing up school, doing some summer stuff, and yeah, I'll be here for another year, and then I'll be graduated.
Excellent. Very cool. Well, you played a role in our drum corps documentary, which it's been a number of years now. You know, making documentary film is not a easy thing to do because you end up with hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage and you have to string a story together. So we actually shot the majority of the film during the 2012 tour, so that's when I first met you. Tom was not on a lot of the tour portion, so he wasn't there, but Tom was intimately involved with the post-production process. And what years did you march in the Madison Scouts?
I marched 2012 and 2014. I was a section leader in 2014.
So 2012 was your rookie year when you were when we were shooting the movie.
Yeah, correct.
Cool. And again, what did you play?
Played snare drum both years.
Cool. That's kind of what you're known for is your snare work, correct?
Yeah, I dabble.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to give this a shot of sharing a scene from the movie. This is a scene. We actually have a sort of a shortened version of this scene that we released recently about how the Madison Scouts are an all-male drum corps, but it only showed the first part, and you make an appearance in the second part. So let's see if we can take a look at this. Share. Say prevent everyone, and give this a shot.
It's an all-male organization. There's a little bit of an edginess to that. You know, in today's day and age, certainly you could be under some scrutiny for being exclusive. My personal viewpoint on that is a little bit different. I think we offer a unique opportunity to help young men become better men, and that's something that our society as a whole requires. And if you're a young lady who's going to marry one of these guys down the road, hopefully you see the value in him growing up and being more mature and being a better husband down the road and being a better father down the road. This isn't about being exclusive and not allowing females to participate in what we do. It's really about helping young men learn skills that young men need.
You know, you go out and look at any other world-class horn line, probably a good third of them are female. We're challenged to make up that difference in terms of being all-male.
We're all on the same level as guys. We all understand each other. We're all competitive. We all, like, when we all go work out, it's just like, all right, let's see who can lift the most. It's like, okay, well, that can translate to this. Like, let's see who can march their dot better. Let's see who can play this phrase of music better. And it just kind of, it's funny because we have our own little competition in here, but when you view it as the outside, you see it as our progress. You have the main goal in sight the entire time,
Yes.
which is finals night. Every day we wake up and we're like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to be finals night.
Yeah, so that kind of sets up the fact in our film that the Scouts are an all-male organization. They have been since their inception in 1938 as a Boy Scout troop, and yeah, I think it was a nice element there to kind of present that. You've seen the movie, correct?
Yeah, it was great.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so that kind of worked well. Tom, you want to talk about that? Let's see, Tom. Did I mute Tom? I thought I muted Tom, but Tom, are you there?
I should still be here.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Sorry, the audio is kind of cutting out a little bit on
No
my.
problem.
But it's okay. I can hear. I'm making out.
So your thoughts about that scene?
Oh, about that scene. I thought it was really important to explain, that particular aspect of the Corps, it's certainly probably the most unique aspect of the Madison Scouts, or one of that. The fact that it's in a lot of ways like a fraternity, and that was a big emphasis, obviously, in making the movie. We have brotherhood in the title, and we wanted to show people that it was not just about what happens on the field, but it was also what this experience, how people carry this experience with them for the rest of our lives. Because I know Mac and I, it was certainly a formative thing for us, and it continues to be a very important thing in our lives.
Yeah, that's how Tom and I met back in 1995, marching in the Madison Scouts. What was the appeal to you, Devin, to audition for the Scouts initially?
It was the staff. I think that's a big factor with what a lot of kids go through when they're trying to choose something. So my instructor, Frank Chappell, throughout 6th grade and high school, when Lee Bettis moved from Crown to Madison, I was one of the first people to know, because Frank contacted me and he was like, "Hey, you need to go here. The instructional staff is going to be great. It's exactly what you want. It's the aggression that you want, and it really matches kind of like how I've taught you." And then when he would come in during the summer, it was just like the exact same as high school. So that was the biggest thing that attracted me there. I didn't really know much about the Corps or anything like that. I didn't really care that there weren't any girls. Like, that wasn't the reason why I was gonna go march drum corps. But that's what attracted me, and then kind of what kept me there is also the staff and like the kind of environment that everyone bought into, the staff and what they were teaching. I think that's a big factor in wherever you go. Is the label is created from the staff, the people who make it happen, and then the students are a reproduction of what the staff is teaching, and so it comes full circle. And yeah, I think that was kind of what attracted me. Well, it is what attracted me. But yeah.
I'm a brass guy. Like I've always hung out with drummers and been a fan of drummers, but it's safe to say that each drum corps, and sort of based on their staff, has a slightly different percussion style. Is that correct?
Oh, for 100%. You almost have to have a different style just in order to stick out to the judges and to who you're recruiting to. You don't have that set style, and you're compared to someone else. It's like if you don't have something that differentiates yourself, you are compared as either the baby corps to another corps, even if you're in the same division. So I think that's a big factor, is creating that style and then doing it again, so people can see that it's it's evident. This is kind of how Madison drums. This is how the Blue Devils drum, and then that fits into how the people that you get, and it makes it easier to communicate once everyone has that idea, basically.
Got it. And Tom, how much has the style changed in the percussion since when you marched?
I would say it's changed dramatically. That's for sure. I had been kind of out of the loop with the activity for a few years prior to us starting to shoot, and that just because I started my own professional career, and I'd been in law school and things like that. And I remember one of the when we went down and we visited Brandon, who's one of the snare drummers that we feature in the movie. I was looking at the notes that had been written and what he was trying to play, and I was like, you got to be out of your mind. It was way different. Of course, it's just like you were saying, though. I think it's largely dependent on the person who's writing the book at that time, and that person. It's almost like a coach in on a sports team. They're the person that sort of develops the culture around the drum line. And we had a really strong personality when I marched, who was writing the drum book, and it was a very different style. I wouldn't necessarily. I don't know if I want to say it's really dated, because I don't really necessarily see it as a dated style. It's just much different. And of course, the same guy that was writing your drum book, certainly in 2012, or not 20, yeah, was he was around the activity when I was marching too. And so he wasn't writing for the Scouts, but he was still kind of a legend in the activity. And it was nice to know that I kind of had some idea about what you guys were going to sound like, just knowing who wrote that book.
For sure.
For sure.
Well, and for those who are tuning in or watching this after the fact that don't know much about our film, going into the film, Tom and I decided that we wanted to focus on the three sort of main sections of the drum corps, which consist of the horn line, the color guard, and the drum line. And we specifically went towards the battery instead of the front ensemble. I've always been a fan of snare drummers, and there's definitely some sex appeal when it comes to playing the snare. I think the snares probably get more eyes on them during the show than probably any other section. You could argue the front ensemble because they're right up front, but part of our task was that we wanted to find characters that had really interesting stories that would help really carry just a general audience viewer, someone who didn't know about drum corps or anything like that, along through the whole process. We wanted to show from auditions to finals, and so the drummer that we ended up following was Brandon McConnell, who we met the summer prior in 2011. Brandon is very smart, very sharp, really good on camera. We had to tell him to slow down. He's talking a little bit because he's like a mile a minute when it comes to shots, but really terrific guy. And so he stood out to us when we met him in 2011, and thought that he would be an interesting person to focus on. And I had no idea that I knew he was coming back, and I knew he wasn't aging out, so that was an important factor. But I had no idea that he was going to be stepping into this role of being the center snare drummer. Devin, can you talk kind of about the responsibility when it comes to center snare in a drum line like the Madison Scouts?
Yeah, there's just a lot of responsibility. You got to be almost, you're the breaking point between the staff and the members. Like, you need to take what the staff says in like criteria and criticism towards the line, and you're responsible for it. You're responsible for each sectional. You're responsible for leading things on the bus. You're responsible for the overall morale of the snare line, of the battery, like of the percussion section. You are a leader with what you say and what you don't say. And you're just on spot the entire time, criticized by your peers and by the staff. And it's very difficult because from a competitive standpoint and just a performing standpoint in practice and rehearsals, there's a lot of weight, and things go to you. They don't go to the guy next to you. They go to the section leader, because he's going to make things happen. He's supposed to make things happen. You have the responsibility to make things happen.
Right. I guess go one step backwards. Like what do people on the snare line? What do they have to do together?
They have to do everything. They have to play. They have to. Are you talking about playing wise, or just
what's for someone who doesn't really know that much about percussion, or you have 8 or 9 snares? Like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is you guys all have to kind of play as one unit, correct?
Yeah.
Because you have to have your not just the you guys are playing at the same velocities and hitting the same way and having the same heights, and have to tempo wise be like totally locked in. Like, you have to have like the same brain all the way down the line, correct?
Yeah, correct. And that all is established from the center snare. He has to know the tempos. He has to know the tendencies. He has to address those things and be the leader and the best example. Like, that's the way you have to play it. It's just like the center snare.
Right.
If that isn't established, the line kind of seems lost without their leader. They don't have that reference point. They do it themselves, or they'll rebel against them. And a lot of tensions can flare up really quickly, especially 80 days in that summer.
I guess that takes us into our next scene that I'd like to show, which definitely has caused some conversations in the audience members and the people involved with the sequence. So I'm not going to say too much about it, but take a look at this clip. It's a little bit longer than the previous one, and we'll talk about it afterwards. One second.
Brandon, he's got a really good vibe on and off the field. He knows how to get people pumped up.
I think Brandon is a good influence on the line overall. I mean, he took what he's learned from the past few years of the Madison Scouts and applied himself in a really strong manner this year, and allowed a group of overall inexperienced guys to come together well and play at a very, very high level.
I'm sorry.
Don't be totally.
No, you don't want me to. I'm sorry. I think you don't want me to be totally honest. On the most serious note, you don't. Sorry. Everybody does.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Everybody has conflicts. Actually, what they said was not true at all. I'm sorry. I'm right next to him. I see.
Yeah, me too.
It just seems like he goes through the motions, and it kind of tears us apart.
Oh, release! Come on, man.
When you don't affiliate him with snare drum or drum corps, he's a great person. He really does care for you, but in the activity, when we're out on the field, it's really driven by the staff. The staff here is phenomenal. Without them, I don't think we'd be anywhere. Like the 2 weeks that we didn't have a snare tech, we actually kind of just fought a lot of the times. We would argue, and Brandon would just stay quiet and just kind of let it settle. And that's dangerous because you don't know where an argument can lead to.
If one person has negative energy on the field, that can directly affect someone else as well. And especially in my position, if I'm in a negative mood, that directly affects everybody else. Because I'm the guy that's saying we need to move faster, and if I'm not there saying that we need to move faster, we need to get this going, this and this, then it just doesn't happen. The way to make this season a success would be to not have any people let down. But if we can keep cleaning up the little things and making the whole production better, I think that would definitely be a good thing. We can't just have reps on reps on reps where it's just the same thing over and over and over again.
Trying to give you guys a million chances to make yourself do it. What we're trying to do. We're not doing this for fun. We're doing it to give you a bazillion chances to do it right. And thus far, most of you don't want to do it right. So, here we go. Again.
Like, there's no consistency, and that's the main problem with this drum line. It's like there's no consistency, and that comes from the center.
You come here, and the first month and a half is all about, you're in this together, you're doing it for the guy next to you. And that's always when we are in rehearsal. And some of us really took that to heart when we're out of rehearsal. Like, we'll eat lunch and breakfast with the same people, and we'll always be in, like, one group. And it's usually the bassist, the quads, and the snares. Like, we'll always do that. But we never see Brandon at lunch, dinner, breakfast. The staff has been harping on, you have so much time in between lunch and rehearsal, and you should just go out and drum. And so the same people are always out there drumming, and it just kind of sucks because our leader is not there.
Yeah, so that's the scene in the movie that we were talking about, drumline conflict sequence, where when we shot that, actually, that was something that I was kind of unaware of happening with the line. So you saw me, maybe some subtitles popping up in a distant voice. That was me behind the camera, sort of chiming in and trying to figure out what was really going on. Devin, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's always hard to watch. That's the second time I've ever watched that because it's not really my go-to. But it's still, it's shocking. It's true. I think when Andy and Corey chime in about it, it kind of, well, I was like, that's not true, and Corey and Andy immediately were like, yeah, that's actually not what's happening, and they had a lot more insight to say about it. So. Yeah, it was true at the time, and Brandon had to deal with a new staff and being a 3-year vet and coming in and needing to be that guy. And, you know, when it wasn't, there was someone right next to him. Like, that was me. I was the kid that wanted to do drum corps every single day in high school. And I worked my butt off every day. And it was just a little frustrating. And that was towards the end of the season when I had literally bottled up everything. And you can kind of hear it in my voice. And I notice it when I play that back. It's just the frustration when I say, you really don't want me to. I hear it. I'm right next to him. I get a little choked up because it's just bottled up. And that was Allentown. That was the day after our performance. You know, there's a week left in the season. So that had been going on since as long as I could remember for that. So that was really tough and really kind of a powerful moment in the movie, just because that's when everything toppled down, and when Corey, Andy, and I really just kind of let it all out. So it was tough. I think it was very direct, and the harshness came from the things that it was true. That's not anyone's fault. It was just the reality. And like I said, Brandon is such a great person when he's out of there, but how I know him, how I met him was through drum corps. And those realities, his job, he needed to do the job, and other people other than me were hungry for it. And it's a tough decision because he wasn't put in that, like, it was just kind of thrown into it. There wasn't really, like, right now at the core there is a huge push towards the leadership and how it's chosen and what you need to do. It's very different than what it is right now. Like right now they're having a leadership session still from the day, like I'm getting them on the group meeting. It's like they are having leadership sessions still with the whole drum corps. And it's so different. You know, if we were all put in that situation in 2012, I think it would be a little bit different. That the documentary would be a little bit different. A lot of those scenes would be a lot different. But, you know, the harshness comes from it being true. And I think when Andy and Corey kind of felt comfortable, they're like, yeah, he's totally kind of right. Like, this, here's what I have to say about it. It's just kind of, you know, that's where the shockingness comes from, is that it was true. But, you know, I don't like going to that scene because it's not something that I like to really kind of brag about, because, you know, we still made it through the year. We were still a pretty good drum line. You can look at both of the positives and the negatives, just because that was such a very detrimental time in the season. I think that really highlighted what we were feeling at that time. It was towards the end, and finals week is hard, man. Finals week is really difficult. That's just those are kind of my thoughts about that.
We've had very different reactions from lots of people on that scene. There were people that told us it was too harsh and needed to come out of the movie, and there were other people that really liked the grittiness and the reality of it. There were people that we marched with back in '95 who thanked us for putting that in, because they're like, that stuff happens every year with the drumline. You know, it's such a high pressure job. You know, one thing that I thought of kind of when all this unraveled, and it kind of really dawned on me that as a horn player, you know, if you want to not play 5 or 6 notes, that's nobody's going to notice. You know, the guy next to you and the guy on the other side probably, but as a snare drummer, you sit out for 5 or 6 notes, and that's horrible. You know, so like, the person in the back row of the stadium may see that. You know, it's not just the sound, but you guys have such a visual responsibility as well. So there's a lot of pressure on the drumline, and you guys are living together 24 hours a day. You're riding, a seat away from these people on the drum bus in the middle of the night, and you guys are probably all sleeping within a few feet of each other in the high school gym. So it's kind of natural that all these things kind of bubble up to the surface.
Yep. Yeah, it happens.
Tom, you saw experiences like that when you marched, correct? Tom, can you hear me? I guess I don't know. Tom may be having some problems. there.
No, I didn't hear that last part. I'm
I
keeping
was
up with
saying,
you pretty much.
did,
What was the
did you
question?
have experiences when you marched in the Scouts?
Certainly.
With a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I marched there for. Yeah, I marched there for. I marched the Scouts for 3 years. I marched in another drum corps for a couple years, and I think one of the things that I'm most proud about the movie is the fact that we actually showed that aspect of it. What happens is, in my experience at least, and from other people I've talked to, is this activity is so intense, and especially it's sort of like what you were talking about, or especially when you get towards around finals and everything is just really building up and building up. The activity is so intense that at certain points, certain things are going to kind of blow over, but you sort of forget about that after a year or so of marching, and everything just sort of seems like, oh, it was such a good time, and everybody was good friends and everything like that. But when you're in it, and it's not always that way. And every single year that I marched, there was things that happened very similar to what we captured here, and I don't think we obviously didn't set out to try to find that drama, but in the back of my head, and I'm sure that in the back of Mac's head as well, because he went through this, we knew we were going to find it at some point. And so the question was whether or not we were going to kind of, I don't want to say whitewash it, but are we going to just have it, or are we going to be, are we going to be true to the activity, at least the way that I know the activity? And I'm really glad that we showed that aspect of it, because I mean, I could tell stories very similar to exactly what happened that summer with that drumline and the drumlines that I marched. And I'm glad that we were able to show that. I know it's not the most, I know it's a little painful, and it's not that fun to look back on that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, always the most fun activity in the world, and it's tough. And I think that demonstrates exactly how tough it is. And also, I think that it's important that that we show in the movie that Brandon ultimately did. He totally, he stepped up and addressed some of these issues that get brought up. And that's one of the great things about the movie. I think that it shows him overcoming some of these challenges as well.
And we have been complimented by people about that scene just because it shows how hard the activity is. And we can show plenty of shots of people sweating and being on the side, out of breath, and with an injury. But to really show sort of the conflict that we show in that scene, it really sort of brings to life that it's such a brutal, difficult activity, but that's why people are becoming better people in the end, because they've gone through some of their hardest times, and they come out on the other side and say, wow, I survived that. I can put those things that I learned and put into action. I can use those same tools, whether I want to become a doctor or a lawyer, a scientist, whatever. It's not just music majors in drum corps. I think a lot of people forget that you can take these tools that you learn day to day, and sometimes these things that you learned day to day don't really show up in your mind, and you don't realize until many, many years later. You're like, oh wow, like I had no idea how much that one thing had an impact on me, and look how I'm using that tool today.
Yeah.
And Devin, you ended up, you didn't come back in 2013, but you were back in 2014, and you were in Brandon's shoes in 2014. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was very interesting, because I was finally there. I was like, okay, I get to be section leader this year. Is going to be so different, and in some ways it was better. In the staff communication to me, I tried to really take things to heart, and that was how I attacked them. But from a member to section leader standpoint, we had a lot of problems. Some that were similar to what I experienced from member to section leader in 2012, and some that were just strictly member created. I can tell you this much: that drumline was very and kind of like an emotional wreck. It taught me a lot about survival and how to keep your patience and to treat other people even when you don't agree with them. There were times where we didn't have a snare tech or a battery tech for 2 weeks, and we had to make do by each section leader being the section techs, and that's when everything split, because they were like, I'm not going to listen to you. Like, you're calling out ticks and you didn't hear it. And it's like, well, guys, work with me here. Like, we don't have a snare tech. So there were similarities from 2012 to 2014 that I had to deal with, and being on that other side, there's a lot of things you cannot control. Like, you cannot control how people view you, but what you can do is control, not how that one person controls how you are being viewed, but you can control how a majority of people view you, so that you can have people, you know, like a great following. Like, people are going to disagree with you all the time, but the majority that are like, no, dude, like, it's all good. This is kind of whack from their perspective. Those are the things that I learned to cherish when I was the section leader. A lot of the same staff coming back. There were a lot of things that I didn't have to deal with. But I think the biggest thing in 2014 was just like the survival, how we survived and how we became, you know, like what we could be. Like, there's a lot of talk about the show design and the whatever from that year, but there are so many things that the snare line could control that we didn't. We let other things that we can't control affect us, and that's where the split happened. Is there was a majority that really chimed into the things that we could control, and there was a minority that trumped that and ended up being a disaster towards the end of the year, and we didn't have a lot of people come back in 15. That was kind of like how that was. But I learned a lot from just kind of the experiences and from 12, and when I became a section leader, I saw things before they happened, and I tried to deal with them the best that I could, but they were so big that I couldn't. I just kind of had to let them happen, and how I react was my biggest thing. But I saw a lot of hypocritical things for myself that, you know, because like I said, I was right next to Brandon all the time. The thought process was, I was there the entire time. So putting myself in his shoes, there were a lot of things in a 12-hour day that I realized I was being hypocritical. And that was the biggest thing, is that in my internal memory, knowing that and overcoming it, or coming to peace with it from when I first marched and how I handled that situation, I think was the biggest thing for me. Because, like I said, I took a year off and I came back and I was trying to be the section leader. That's kind of, that in itself, I had my own battles. But when I became section leader, I noticed a lot of things that I was saying or putting on Brandon that I shouldn't have. And I think that's a big thing, like I said, with me coming to peace and answering a lot of questions that I had in my rookie year, especially being where I was, splitting center and being there with Brandon. Like, Brandon and I were supposed to be the team. Like, that's what the staff always harped on, and we couldn't do that, so a lot of my anger, came up because it was frustrating. But the team aspect, you know, that was kind of like a big thing that I learned and tried to instill. You can't force a lot of people to do. You can't force people to do certain things, and that kind of explains that season.
And you guys are about to talk. All right.
Oh, say that again?
You guys sort of made peace with this and talked periodically. Is that right?
Oh yeah, Brandon called me right as he saw the documentary and was kind of apologizing, and I was like, dude.
All right, you break. Will you say something, Mac? I'm sorry, I can't. It's kind of breaking up.
I can hear Devin just fine.
You good?
Sorry, go ahead, Devin.
Brandon called me right after he saw the documentary and just immediately started apologizing, and I told him, I was like, dude, you don't, like, stop. You don't have to apologize. Like, those things happened, and like if you're regretting them, like they had to happen in order for you to be great in 2013. Like, for you to apologize to me, like that's not what I want. I don't want an apology. I don't want anything. That happened, and it was documented. At that time, that was what I thought. So him to call me like that, really emotional, I wanted to really make sure that I didn't think those things. I didn't hold them against him, because, like I said, off the field, Brandon's a different person. I didn't get to know that Brandon because we live in different areas, but, you know, that was when we kind of made peace, or kind of opened up the discussion about that scene. And for him to, I remember he said he talked to Dan, and Dan talked to me about it, and kind of like really got to him, and always letting him know that, like, don't still think those things about you, or that was in a certain situation. That's really important. And I think that goes back to any year anyone marches. Like, there's an identity that you have as a member and as a section leader that within, whether you have problems or not, within the summer, that's your identity. And afterwards, if you don't make up or give that person even another chance, I think that's a big deal. I think you have to be able to give people those two identities and separate, because you create these identities. And now, unless it's like a social thing that happened within drum corps and you have your own reasons, I understand.
Sure.
But in this case, Brandon never mentally hurt me or called me bad names or things like that. So him and I are normal, as good as we can get without seeing or being able to talk to each other every day.
Sure.
And I think that's the beauty about this documentary too, is that there can be conflict within your job roles and your job specifications, but it ends after 2012. You still hold those grudges to members or to section leaders. I think that shows a little bit of weakness right here in your heart. As sappy as that gets, that's like the level you have to go to.
Yeah, definitely. So now you've transitioned from you aged out in 2014, and you've been involved as part of the drum staff now. Can you talk about how that role has affected you, how that's different, and then let's talk about the current season, the Judas show in 2016.
Yeah, for sure. The transition for me was very, very, very tough. It was probably one of the hardest summers in 2015 when I was on all but 2 weeks. I was on since day one all the way, I think it was like a week before San Antonio, or a couple days before San Antonio, which is like July 23rd, around there. It's a big chunk. Mentally, a lot of snare techs are a lot older. A lot of head snare techs are a lot older. And for me to come out right after an emotional season like 14 and all the stuff that I had to deal with and teach, and the way I was brought up for it to be teaching was very difficult for me. I came out that summer stronger, but in the process, I was going through a lot of mental things, determining, like, it was like mental numbness. I didn't know what I was doing right. I didn't know if I was going to get asked back to teach again. So that was stirring me up. I didn't know, like, the technicality of, like, tuning the drums. I didn't have a reference for it. I was competing against 11 other in my mind, I was competing other 11 other snare techs in the top 12 drum corps at and it's just a display of what I know. So there was a lot of pressure for me in the 2015 season, mainly just because I just aged out and there was a lot of weight on my shoulders. And a lot of the responsibility, because I was just new, was different for me. Like, I put onto myself, like, I'm going to learn the book. I'm going to be able to do this because I still have the chops and I still want to keep them up. So finding the member to staff balance was very difficult for me. I would be able to have close conversations with the members because I'm only a year or two older than them. I relate to them. And then the staff, but I need to transition to the staff side. How do I do that? Well, I'm trying to solve problems and be a great snare tech, but I'm also trying to keep the morale good because there's zero leadership because no one came back. But I'm also trying to be on the staff side and keep my relationship with these new staff members different. So that was what I was battling, like, all throughout that season. And towards the end, especially when you finish one season of drum corps as a member, you gain a lot and then come back as a rookie and you have a lot of tools in your arsenal. So this summer I'm doing much better. I'm doing way better, I think. The snares are playing great. Now the show overall is a monster. It's so much music, especially for the battery. Like, there's 5 movements, and movement 1 is about 4.5 minutes long, and it's just show feature. And I think the coolest thing about this show, So the show's Judas, and it's basically told from the it's Jesus Christ Superstar, but it's told from the perspective of Judas, and it's really cool because it's not really based off of like a religion or like something like that. And this was what Casey Michael was talking to us about. This isn't supposed to be like a religious opening or anything like that. What it's supposed to be is a rendition of the movie from a different perspective and musically inclined to support that. So there's one role, just kind of like last year with 78th and Madison, where we kind of follow one person. There's Judas, and he has a red hood on. And it's really cool to see him go through the movie. There's movie scenes and quotations from the movie, but it's all from Judas's perspective. So you see him as like a bystander, but he's the star of the movie, of the show. And I think the really cool thing that captures the perspective is one of these. It's in the ballad. They do like the Last Supper, and they have like the 12 disciples, I believe, and Jesus is missing from the middle, and Judas is still dressed up as himself as the star. And you see in context like where he is, and then all of it comes down to like the betrayal and that Judas has towards Jesus, and the show itself is just a whole build up to that betrayal, which is like the drum break and the action scene from like all the drill and the shaping, the staging is so great and different. And it's just a different look for the Madison Scouts. It's a tougher, like kind of like manlier, an aggression that can kind of be displayed into like what we've always wanted to be, which is like this poised but aggressive, like statue, like full of testosterone, and it's just a lot of grit and a lot of things that make you want to get up out of your seat. And
awesome.
It's just the pacing of the show is what I can really kind of unfold to you guys and to people who are listening. When you go watch the show, there's so much to watch. Like I can't even grasp my head around everything that's going on, and you know, the pacing of the show is really unique. I think this is going to be a very controversial show in terms of what we're displaying, but overall, it's just going to be something that's a crowd pleaser. Be it competitive, we don't know yet. We haven't stepped onto the field and be judged. It's also not August 9th. We don't know where it's going to be competitively. But the cool thing about it is that we have a group of men that also don't care about that. And it's the first time since I've been here that I actually feel like the work is being put in for themselves and the Brotherhood and the show, and no one cares about anyone else. And that's a great thing to be in, because what other people do is other people place you. Other people, you don't go out seeking for the placement, other people place you. And when you do things for yourself, a lot of greatness comes from it, because it's first timers. And I think that's what this show is going to be. From a show design standpoint and from a member standpoint, there's going to be a lot of first-time things that can be seen as controversial, but also pushing the activity and pushing what we want the Madison Scouts to be portrayed as.
Great.
Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of the things you're saying harken back to when Tom and I marched. It was very reminiscent of that. And there are a lot of guys who taught us back in '95 who have shown up this year. Chris Harmon and Bill Zier and Van Matthews and a lot of those fantastic guys that we're totally thrilled that they're back and involved with the Corps. And I get to see the show on Friday in Fresno, California. So
you're gonna love it, man. It's great.
I get to see actually 4 nights in a row: Fresno, Sacramento, Stanford, and then Santa Clara. And one of the snare drummers that I marched with and Tom marched with in '95, Chris Hollenbeck, is flying out from Wisconsin. He was the story consultant on the documentary, so he's going to be out here with me. And yeah, super happy, super excited. And the other cool thing is that we get our first boxes of DVDs and Blu-rays. I'm actually going to pick them up. They're being shipped just in time to me in Fresno, and we're going to deliver those to the Madison Scouts souvenir stand. So they're going to have, I believe it's 200 copies of the DVD and 300 copies of the Blu-ray DVD combo pack that we're donating to them as a thank you for their support throughout the process of making the documentary. So if you see them this summer, be sure to buy a movie from the Subi stand, because it definitely helps the Corps, keeps them going down the road, buying fuel and meals for the members and the staff, which are very important. Keep you guys going.
Yeah,
So,
I got my hands on one.
Yeah.
I've only seen it once.
And you have to experience it in a 5-1 setting, because we definitely took great effort in recording the performances, especially Whitewater and Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
In 5-1, and it sounds really good. So we're going to wrap this up in a few minutes, but wanted to make sure we talk about how, kind of what's going on with your percussion career outside of drum corps. I've seen your name come across Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, often, which I think is fantastic. So can you elaborate kind of what's gone on in the past few years?
Yeah, so I think it all basically kind of started when I competed at PASIC and got my name out there. It was always something that I wanted to do. Competing at PASIC and winning that snare competition in 2014 was probably what kicked off my career, led me towards doing a lot of videos with BYOS, BYOS, which is Ralph Nader's label, and he has his own stick with Harvey Thompson, and it's so great to be able to be a part of that. But my main thing was the grid book series, which was being a grid book educator, and that all happened this year, this past PASIC in in San Antonio. And basically what that was, so John Lavera was one of the techs in 2014 and 2015. I became very good friends with him in 2015. And I'm still great friends with him, obviously. Just kind of approached me, and I asked for a grid book, and it's just this huge stack of, it's a method book, and it's great. And I just started running with it. I started learning a lot about it, and I started to take a grid. It was an etude. It was a method, and I would write an etude to it. Sorry, it was a technical thing that I would write an etude to, and then put it on Instagram. So when people just started learning them, they became a thing. It was like the grid was on Mondays, the etude came out on Wednesdays, you were featured on Fridays. And that was where the publicity through the grid book series started coming up. And it was just, I kept doing it weekly, led all the way up to PASIC, and that's where they signed me, and I became the first official grid book educator. So that's kind of what I've been doing right now, is just writing etudes based off of gridding, and the grid kind of establishes like a key signature for rudimental drummers. Like there's a lot of literature out there that's just on the snare drum, that's just kind of like, these are notes, these are rudiments. Like as rudiments act towards pieces, grids are like a gigantic expression of that. It'd be like saying if like, oh, you're gonna do this just through the arpeggio. Like if you just had arpeggios and you didn't have a scale. Like the arpeggio is the rudiment and the scale is the grid. So that's kind of what I'm doing, kind of geeking out on it right now, but there's a lot to be established through that, and that's kind of what my goal is. Writing literature in the future, we have some exciting news coming out pretty soon about what I've been doing on Instagram and turning that into a book, which is very exciting. And that's kind of what I got my head into, also while I'm trying to finish school. So trying to push myself in school and this company that I'm very much grateful to be affiliated with and be the name towards. It's a lot of, and the Madison Scouts as well. It's a lot of things that I'm doing that will either, it's a sink or swim kind of thing. If I I can either drop these and do one or do all three of them, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do right now. So yeah, my Instagram is, I'm grateful for that, but kind of pushing through every day and getting the word out on the grid book series and kind of really trying to educate people on snare drumming and rudimental drumming, and a lot of the things that we talk about is just kind of what the main factor that I've gained in the last year or two. So kind of what I've been up to.
That's terrific. You're a busy guy, and it's good to be busy and sort of conquer all these things and just kind of see where it goes.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, do you have any last thoughts or questions? I guess Tom is has been buzzing out, but that's okay. We'll wrap it up. Why don't you, Devin? Why don't you share your social media links so people can find?
No.
Tom
It sort of
here.
looks like that, but no. No, my last thought. It's great to hear you get kind of caught up here again and see where get a little bit of where are they now with one of our characters, and it's fantastic to see.
Definitely. Well, Devin, why don't you share your Instagram link?
More of an audio issue.
And are you
Sorry,
on
man.
other
Be
places?
quiet.
Is that the can I just do that on the send a message thing?
I don't know. Why don't you tell people verbally if you can, if it's easy?
Oh, okay. Well, on my Instagram, it's just at Devin_Garza, DEVIN_GARZA, and that's where I have my professional account, and that's where I'll do a lot of promotion for the Madison Scouts and what I'm doing for myself, and I have a lot of the grid book series on there as well. And my affiliation with BIOS. So any videos that I have on YouTube, anything that I come out with that's literature-wise through the grid book series, what I'm doing with the Madison Scouts, you can really stay up to date with me. I have some really cool pictures that I've edited of the snares, and yeah, Devin is just Devin_Garza on Instagram. So.
Fantastic. A lot of people aren't going to be at a show this year where the Madison Scouts are going to be performing. You can certainly buy our DVD and Blu-ray on our website. We are self-distributing, so any help to get the word out is really fantastic because we don't have a big Hollywood marketing machine. Visit scoutshonormovie.com, just how it sounds, scoutshonormovie.com, and we have the DVD and the Blu-ray for sale on there, so definitely get a copy, watch it, and then spread the word. Let people know if you like it. We have a high rating on IMDb right now, and people have also been reviewing it on Rotten Tomatoes, so that stuff also helps as well. And the movies really are a unique way of just giving back to the drum corps activity. So we want more people to learn about the positive aspects about drum corps, what it's really like, and then sort of open new eyes and ears. So thanks, Devin. We appreciate taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, thank you, Mac. Thanks, Thomas.
And we'll catch up soon.
For sure.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.